Hi, and welcome to the show. Subscribe at kevinmd.com/podcast. Get CME for this episode by clicking on the CME link in the show notes. Today, we welcome back Wendy Schofer. She is a pediatrician. Her most recent KevinMD article is titled The Power of Self-Appreciation, Why Physicians Need to Start Acknowledging Their Own Contributions. Wendy, welcome back to the show.
Thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to be here with you.
So Wendy has been on the show multiple times. For those interested in hearing her story, just go to kevinmd.com/podcast. In the upper right-hand corner, there's a search bar. Search up Wendy's name for her prior episodes and her story. But today, let's go straight into your most recent article. Tell me, how did this one come together?
It's funny. I had a couple of friends that were talking about how they were going to be doing presentations for National Doctors Day,
Yeah.
which is right around the corner, and being asked about appreciation and topics to talk about. I'm like, oh, I got an earful on that one. I totally can give you an earful on appreciation. But I really just started kind of expanding upon that. And, how we always kind of have those grumbles about, the emails that come out,
Yeah.
addressing all providers
Yeah.
on Doctor's Day, and how it kind of feels like it misses the mark.
Yeah. Why is that? When you get those emails saying, thank you, providers, how does that make you feel?
Oh gosh. Well, I don't feel seen.
Yeah.
I totally don't feel seen. I mean, first of all, I don't need another email. It's not
Yeah.
not the way that I feel appreciated that I get to open yet another email. And I get it. They've got a lot of people they're trying to express over, this large area, but it misses the mark. And then yet, of course, as a physician, um, I don't feel seen when I'm called provider
Yeah.
at all.
Yeah. 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 So go on. So what are some reasons why you think physicians need that appreciation?
Oh my gosh. I mean, I think it's just going back to our, human needs that we need to feel, included and loved, and, having that give and take, feeling that what we are giving is being received in a meaningful way for us. And so I think that's a part of that appreciation. It's a form of love,
Mm.
and just what that does for us as far as human needs psychologically. Oh, we need that. We so need that. And I think that there's so much in the business sense of medicine, and looking at the numbers, and looking at the metrics and how we can keep everything going. But ultimately, we are humans and we have needs, and really looking at that connection, that sense of well-being, and that I'm being seen.
Over the past few years, especially through the pandemic, tell us about physicians being seen and how that may have deteriorated over the years.
I think everybody has a different experience, a different story with that. I think that, early on in the pandemic, for some folks, there was this wave of appreciation.
Yeah.
There were parades and, people hooting and hollering out the windows, and, a lot of expression of gratitude. There were also those of us who were underemployed early on in the pandemic. And so it kind of felt like it didn't really resonate. Like, I'm glad that others are receiving that appreciation, but it kind of felt false to me, as I was being told that there wasn't enough work for
Mm.
me to come in. So kind of goes both ways. And so it actually reminds me of, we had spoken before about my military experience,
Yeah.
about folks who, thank me for my service, and how I've had a really hard time with that over time, receiving that expression of gratitude and appreciation, because I kept on thinking that I needed to do something in particular in order to be receiving
Yeah.
of that. Well, I wasn't in XYZ war zone. Like, who am I to receive that? I think that also came up in that comparison early on with the pandemic about, others, it was okay for them to receive that appreciation,
Hmm.
but maybe not me. And I think it's just kind of evolved over time as well, where, it's really hard. It's
Yeah.
really hard with the pace and the volume. It's definitely come back. There's
Yeah.
definitely plenty of work to go around. But yet, how are we receiving that appreciation now?
So, as a physician, what are some ways that you like to feel that appreciation? How would you like to receive that appreciation?
I feel that right in my heart when you ask that. You know, I talk about in the story about the five love languages, and I
Okay.
think that along with it, how there's, physical touch and words of affirmation, acts of service, we can go through all that, but I was kind of joking around about, well, we're not going to be having, those physical touching, I don't
Yeah.
want that from the CEO.
Sure.
But I realized that that was actually the biggest thing that was missing for me, especially in those early days of the pandemic.
Mm.
I missed that physical connection. Parents, one of my biggest ways to be able to connect with moms who are just going through all of it
Yeah.
is to give them a hug, kind of like that solidarity and
Hmm.
like I'm here with you, and I don't know, emotional regulation that we have with a hug. And I missed that. And then, of course, I never turned down a single kid that ever came up to me, offering me a hug. And then all
Hmm.
of a sudden during the pandemic, I'm like, 6 feet, kid, 6 feet.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was really hard. And I realized, I was joking about how it's not about physical touch, but actually it is for me.
Sure.
It's a big thing of receiving that appreciation, receiving that love. And then also the words of affirmation, it means a lot. For me in particular, collecting those cards, having families. I just had a family that we had a, a challenging evaluation this past week. And at the end of this, they're like, can you just be our doctor all the time?
Yeah.
And I got to tell you, that spoke volumes to me, because I was thinking the entire time, man, this is just a mess. This is taking forever. They're going to be upset. And here they're like, you're taking your time. We want you to work with us all the time. So it's those words that mean a lot to me.
Yeah. So sometimes that same encounter from our perspective and the perspective of the patient sometimes can be completely different. And sometimes we need that patient or the patient's family to kind of express their perception of how that visit went in order
Yeah.
to kind of affirm what we're doing.
Yeah. Well, and the thing that reminded me of, because we talked about that, or you mentioned about the self appreciation. Well, it's so natural, as I was going through that visit thinking it's taking so long, this is a hungry family, they're going to
Yeah.
be upset. Like I was going to all the negative, as opposed to thinking about, okay, I was giving them the best darn care.
Hmm.
I was being thorough, like all the things that I could have offered myself right there, appreciating what I am doing, how I'm being the physician that I want to be, the physician that they need. And I think it comes back to that, how it meant a lot for them to say something to me.
Hmm.
That wasn't the whole story. I mean, it kind of like countered all of the negative stuff that I was thinking along the way, that they were going to be upset, that their bellies are rumbling from waiting
Hmm.
so long. But I could have offered that the entire time. And I think that's the opportunity that, you know, as we wait for other people to affirm us, to express that appreciation, we can be waiting a long time.
Yeah. What are some things that we can do among physicians ourselves to kind of help with that self appreciation piece? Because sometimes you're right, we can't just wait for others to appreciate us, whether it's patients or the administration. What can we do within the physician community?
Yeah. I think just talking about it
Yeah.
is a big step. Like, we're humans. We are like just normal. We want to be able to have connection, to feel appreciated, and to just be able to express that out loud, because we are so not machines.
Yeah.
We are not machines. And we need this. And so I think that just having these types of conversations, being vulnerable about it and saying, yeah, this is really important to me. And I think that part of that, it helps me see that I can speak up and out in expressing that with other people. Just in my day to day, kind of recognizing what I see, how I appreciate how people have brightened my day,
Mm.
how they make my day easier, like kind of putting it in terms as far as like, this is something that we are going through together. I appreciate who you are. I appreciate what you're doing because that's something that means so much to me. Oh, I'm totally fueled by that. And so I want to be able to share that with others.
Sure.
I think that's a big part of it. Like when we just recognize how important it is for us, we can then share that. And then, it can have a beautiful, virtuous cycle.
So for the patients listening to you right now, let's give them examples of some words they can use, small things that they can do to express some of that gratitude that makes such a big difference in your life.
Oh, man. Well, I mean, I'm a patient too.
Yeah.
We all are. So I think it's something to just recognize we all have a negativity bias.
Yeah.
Like I recognize, as I get the evaluation forms, like after my visit, and they're like, you need to rate XYZ services and doctors. I'm like, oh, whatever, I don't have time for this.
Yeah.
I totally have the time when something didn't go so well.
Of course.
I totally have the time then. But just noticing that, and I would just offer like, what who made your day brighter today? Who has helped you? How has this helped you? And I don't know if that's even particular to, offering to your doctor, to your nurse, in the medical setting, but just kind of thinking about that along the way. Like, how do you want to recognize someone maybe made your life a little bit brighter? And I think about that all the time. I think we may have talked about this before with the evaluations.
Yeah.
But, I work in urgent care, and so no one comes to see me on their best day.
Mm-hmm.
No one. And I just have it in the back of my mind that, all I am trying to do is to just make their day a little bit better.
Yeah.
But I realize that nobody's coming in and like, oh, this was amazing. But, I offer to, my administration, like instead of kind of having the evaluation afterwards, like, how is this? How is that? Who can we thank
Mm-hmm.
for the excellent care that you received today? I guess it's just a reframing,
Sure.
and we can all do that.
Now, following up on that, a lot of administrators, they often wonder what's the best way they can appreciate the physician staff. Now, if you had a direct line to CEOs, and we do have a lot of administrators listening to you, what are some suggestions you could give to them?
Talk to your people.
Yeah.
They know. I mean, for some people, they're like, yeah, I totally, don't need anything in particular, or I don't want anything. Other people, they're like, bring on the pizza party.
Yeah. Yeah.
I got to tell you, I love meeting people face to face. I would love to get to know you, to, know who you are. But I think that is something that we could really ask that question
Mm-hmm.
of our people and not make generalities about it. And I think that the more what's behind that answer is the more that we have that direct human connection. I think that's what goes the furthest. So reach out to your people, ask them. I'm sure they have some input.
We're talking to Wendy Schofer. She's a pediatrician. Her latest KevinMD article is titled The Power of Self-Appreciation, Why Physicians Need to Start Acknowledging Their Own Contributions. Wendy, tell us some of your take-home messages that you want to leave with the KevinMD audience.
Oh my goodness. It's really something I think that as we are talking right now about recognizing other people, what it is that we can do to let them know how they've brightened their day, let's not overlook what it is that we're doing. And that part about self-recognition, even just those words of affirmation that we can give ourselves about, yeah, I totally nailed that diagnosis. Hey, I got a note done while the patient was here. Like
Sure.
just recognizing those successes, offering ourselves appreciation for who we are, what we're doing, what we're learning. And I think that's a big part. Like as we're growing, it doesn't all look beautiful.
Yeah.
Like how are we growing along the way? And that's something that we can offer to ourselves along the way. We don't have to wait for someone else to do it.
Wendy, thank you so much again for sharing your time and insight. Thanks for coming back on the show.
Such a pleasure.